Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Joy Luck Club. By Amy Tan. Amy Tan was the author of The Joy Luck Club, which was released in 1989. Following the lives of four mothers and their daughters, this novel is a compelling read. In 1949, a group of Chinese ladies came to the United States and gathered in San Francisco to play mahjong. It was called the Joy Luck Club by them. They played games and ate a wide variety of dishes throughout the meetings. The Joy Luck Club was modeled after a group of women Su Yuan Wu founded during the Japanese invasion of China in World War II. Women at the Joy Luck Club usually wished each other happiness and good fortune when they parted ways. There are 4 sections in each of the book's 4 parts. Except for Su Yuan, whose tale is relayed by others, each mother narrates her own story in the book. Their mothers' stories are shared by each of the 4 daughters. Because they were reared in the U.S., their girls don't grasp what their mothers mean when they use criticisms to convey their love. The other members of the Joy Luck Club assigned Su Yuan's daughter Jingmei the responsibility of meeting the twin girls she was forced to abandon in China. Unfortunately, Su Yuan died before she could meet with her daughters. When she and her father exit the plane, they are greeted with warmth and generosity. When she looks at the two of them together, she sees her mother. Feathers from 1,000 li away. This section opens with a story about a Chinese immigrant moving to the U.S. Preparing to go, she buys an ornament from a salesman who tells her about a duck who wanted the opportunity to fly like a goose. He elongated his neck to the point that he resembled a swan in flight. It exceeded all of its expectations. The woman dreams of having a daughter while she cruises to the United States. However, she will be judged on her own merits and not on the basis of her husband's deeds. A feather is all she has left after the swan is confiscated by the immigration officers, leaving her with no choice but to give the bird to her daughter instead. In the future, when her daughter is born and grows up to be the kind of strong woman she had envisioned, she wants to give her the feather, but prefers to wait until she can fully explain its significance in English. Jingmei visits her father in this section's first paragraph. Her mother had died 2 months prior. Canning Wu, her father, invited her to join him at the mahjong party. After moving to the United States from China in 1949, he and his wife founded the Joy Luck Club in San Francisco. Her mother, Su Yuan, had formed a mahjong club in China based on a previous club she had started. Kuomintang officer Fuji Wang had moved Su Yuan and their twin girls to a little village called Guilin, which was the capital of the Kuomintang from 1928 until 1940. While he traveled to Chunnaking, they could rest assured they were protected. There were many refugees in Guilin, a community with few resources. Su Yuan gathered with 3 other females for a get-together. They'd get together to play mahjong, eat a feast, and swap tales of their adventures. Then, as they departed, they prayed for each other's happiness and well-being. Because of this, the events were dubbed Joy Luck. An officer made the suggestion to her one day that she come to Chunnaking with her spouse. In her mind, she knew that meant the Japanese were on their way. To begin the lengthy journey, she gathered her possessions and 2 young girls and set out. She had to pare down her wardrobe to just 3 gowns by the time she arrived. The twins were also gone, and she did not tell Jingmei what happened to them. Jingmei attends a Joy Luck Club meeting with her father, but she feels out of place and unsure of herself. Her mother had constantly made comparisons between her and Waverly, the more successful daughter of the friend. Because of her mother's constant belittling, Jingmei has come to believe that she is less than she should be. It doesn't help that her mother's friends are hurling insults at her behind her back. Her self-esteem has virtually hit rock bottom by the time she is ready to go. Her mother has been searching for their missing girls for years, as revealed by the women who have since stopped her. When she died, she had just received their addresses. Her half-sisters want Jingmei to go on behalf of their mother and inform them about their biological mother. They contribute to her trip expenses. Jingmei worries that she doesn't know enough about her mother to be able to tell the twins about her. This section is called Scar. And Mei was just 4 years old when her mother was taken as a concubine by the emperor of the country. Her grandma, Popo, took in the 2 of them and sent them to live with her. It wasn't until her grandma grew gravely ill that Mei remembered who her mother was. Then Mei recalled how her mother had tried to return with her children once before but had been denied permission to do so. When Mother Mei slices off a bit of her skin to put in a soup for her mother, it's supposed to be a sacrifice to heal a family member. With time, Mei comes to appreciate her mother's selflessness. This section is called the Red Candle. Mother and daughter are at the center of this tale. Lin Dozhong was promised to Huang Tianyu when she was just 2 years old. Tian mother Yu's Huang Tai even referred to her as her daughter. As a result of her family's flood-damaged home when she was 12 years old, Lindo moved into the home of her future husband. As a servant, she came to crave Tai's attention and admiration. Lindo and Tianyu got married when they were just 16 years old. On their wedding night, the matchmaker lit a crimson candle from both ends. Their union would be successful if the candle was lit equally. A storm forced the servant who was keeping an eye on the candle to flee. She misunderstood what was happening. In the meantime, Lindo, who was unhappy about marrying Tianyu but was willing to fulfill her duty provided she could maintain her own identity in little ways, blew out one end of the candle from her marital bed. When she woke up the next morning expecting to see her marriage contract dissolved because the unlit light would mean that Tianyu would die if he remained wedded to her, she was shocked to see the candle burning evenly and a regretful servant. The candle was apparently relit by the servant once he returned. Within a short period of time, Tianyu had Lindo sleeping on the couch, and the two never married. Her son's mother became enraged and demanded that they sleep together. At long last, Lindo devised a plan of escape. That the servant had allowed the candle to extinguish, and he would die if the couple remained married, she told her mother-in-law. That the ancestors had implanted his seed in the womb of an undercover princess was also mentioned. Tian's spiritual youth's bride, she was. In order to avoid giving birth out of wedlock, Lindo agreed to the deliveryman's plan to get the girl pregnant. Lindo moved to the United States when her marriage was declared null and void. The Moon Lady. When Ying first went to the Moon Festival, she was just 4 years old. Her nanny had put on a new outfit for her. As soon as she saw the Moon Lady, Ying couldn't wait to tell her dreams. If she tells anybody else about her wishes, the nanny says, they will develop into selfish desires. A woman, according to her, should pay attention but never initiate conversation. It was a lifelong lesson for her. In the meantime, Ying is watching the chef, but she gets fish blood on her dress from being too close. Fish blood is smeared over her gown to avoid causing her nanny any offense and to keep the dress from turning a blood-red color. Furious with the mess, her nanny takes off her dress and slips her back into it. Tells her to go back to bed. However, she is lured out into the open by the firecrackers and ends up in the ocean. A fisherman's net catches her. In the event that she is unable to provide an address for her family, he decides to abandon her on the coast. Ying hopes her family will find her after watching a performance about the Moon Lady. It didn't change her perception that they had found a different person, she just couldn't get her finger on it. The 26 Malignant Gates. The story of a Chinese woman and her American-born daughter serves as the prologue to this part. To get to the other side of the block, the 7-year-old wants to ride her bike. Using the 26 Malignant Gates to show her the dangers she will face if she is not under her mother's constant watch and is against her mother's will. When her mother refuses to translate the book, the young girl becomes enraged and rides her bike around the block, where she falls and injures herself. Rules of the game. Waverly, Lindo's daughter, achieved national chess championship status. It was via chess that Waverly discovered her mother's secret of unseen strength. In the end, she just fell 429 points short of being the grandmaster due to her dedication and hard work. As a way of showcasing her daughter's accomplishments, Lindo took her around Chinatown's businesses. Embarrassed, Waverly yelled at her mother as they walked down the street. When Waverly returned home that night, her mother informed her that if she didn't care about her family, they wouldn't either. Waverly imagined her connection with her mother as a chess game and envisioned her mother knocking all of Waverly's pieces to the ground that night as she lay in bed. In spite of Waverly's sense of disorientation, she deliberated on her next course of action. The voice from the wall. When Lena St. Clair was younger, her mother, Ying, never spoke to her about China. Only her English-Irish father, Clifford, could explain how he came to her rescue. Ying used hand gestures and facial expressions to communicate because she couldn't speak English. Lena, her daughter, was fluent in Mandarin but misunderstood her mother's meaning while speaking to others. Her mother made Lena feel ashamed, and she wished she could be more like the other American mothers she saw around her. The Italian girl in the flat next door was having a quarrel with her mother when Clifford was placed there, and Lena would sit there and listen. When Lena heard the discussions, she was shocked to meet the girl the next day with no visible signs of trauma. A hilly location made Ying feel as if the house was unbalanced, therefore she was unhappy in her new flat. Ying had a baby, yet she was still depressed. She put the responsibility on herself when the boy died shortly after birth as a result of serious problems. Another son she had killed kept resurfacing in her ramblings. While Lena's husband was able to decipher Lena's words, she was still able to convey hope and solace to him. Ying Ying feels depressed when she gets home. Even though Lena's connection with her mother is strained, she believes it is better than the one she has with one of her neighbors. That is, until the girl enters her room. Her mother has locked the door on her, but she has a plan to sneak in through Lena's window. Even though she thought the girl and her mother were fighting, Lena understands they were just having fun with the prank when she hears them laughing at it. Half and half. When Kid Maze is in the house, she's busy in the kitchen. In order to break the news to her mother that her marriage is over, Rose Shu Jordan sits at her dining room table, attempting to gather her courage. As Rose looks over at the table, she discovers that her mother's Bible, which she cherished, is now propped up against the leg. Rose remembers the first time she and Ted had sex. Having both of their moms oppose the match strengthened their resolve. Rose was content with Ted making all of the decisions when they were initially married. Ted, on the other hand, wanted Rose to make more of the decisions when he faced a malpractice action as a dermatologist. When she protested, he confessed his desire for a divorce. She had to tell her mom about it now. Rose is reminded of the incident that shook her mother's faith every time she opens the Bible. They were at the beach and Rose was supposed to look after her younger brothers while the rest of them played. Rose agreed to let Bing play on the rocks. Rose screamed in horror as he slumped to the ground. Both she and the rest of her family held themselves responsible for his death, blaming their own tardiness. His remains were never discovered. And May utilized everything she'd learned throughout her life to convince the gods to give her son back the following morning, and Rose went with her mother. She was certain she could get her son back if she just focused her efforts. Then, when she threw a rescue tube into the sea and it came back shredded, she decided it was time to give in. While Rose first believed that religion could not affect the course of events, she later recognized that fate is a combination of expectation and indifference. Rose blames herself for her husband's demise on her own inattention, which she believes led to Bing's drowning. Rose thinks she must read the Bible, so she pulls it out from under the table. Then she recalls that the date of Bing's death was written in an erasable pencil in the Bible. Two kinds. Su Yuan believed her daughter Jingmei, like Waverly, was a young prodigy simply waiting to be discovered. When Su Yuan was watching the Ed Sullivan Show one night, Jingmei decided to give piano a try. So, Jingmei was chosen to play the piano. Her neighbor, Mr. Chong, offered to teach Jingmei the piano, but when she discovered that Mr. Chong was nearly deaf, Jingmei gave up on learning the correct notes. He only paid attention when the beats weren't quite right. Thus, she never took lessons. At long last, it had come time for the Joy Luck Club's piano presentation. After sitting down, Jingmei was sure her prodigy would take over and she'd play flawlessly. She was wrong. She refused to do so. A furious Jingmei shouted that she wished she had died like her sisters in response to Su Yuan's pleas to continue her studies. Because of this, Su Yuan allowed her to let go of the piano. Su Yuan then offered to let her take the piano home for her 30th birthday. She whispered under her breath that Jingmei could have played better if she'd practiced more. Pleading Child is the song Jingmei performed at her performance after the death of her mother. The piano has been tuned and she begins playing. Jingmei attempts the song perfectly contented on the following page and is pleasantly surprised to find that the two songs are complementing. Each half is a separate song. American translation. Another mother-daughter narrative opens this segment. A Chinese mother pays a visit to the new apartment of her American daughter. As she looks down at her bed, she notices that her daughter has placed a mirror at her feet. Because of the mirror's ability to reflect and deflect happiness, her mother tells her that it would make her marriage unhappily miserable as a result. The mother hangs the mirror she received as a housewarming present at the head of the bed. She tells her daughter it will bring good luck in the form of peaches. A mother's response to a daughter's question, "I can see my future granddaughter in the mirror." When the daughter asks for an explanation, she sees a child in him that looks just like her. Rice husband. Visits with Lena at her new residence are on the agenda for Ying Ying. Lena reflects on her mother's claim that she was able to predict the future of her family. Lena is perplexed as to why she did nothing when she knew exactly what would happen. Whenever she sees her mother, Harold, she is curious to see what she will say. When Lena was a kid, she had an experience with her mother that she remembers vividly. A pockmark would be made on the cheek of her future spouse for each grain of rice she left in her bowl, according to her mother. Lena's thoughts turned to the neighboring bully with pox on his face. She began to believe that she might influence her future husband by what she ate and so avoid getting married to him. Lena began to starve herself to death. Years later, she was devastated to learn that the boy next door had died of a rare kind of measles, and she held herself responsible. This is ludicrous, but she wonders whether her present husband is a punishment for what she did to her destined marriage, even though she knows it's absurd. Lena and Harold's finances are in disarray. Things have gotten out of hand between them, despite the fact that they have always split the costs. Initially, Lena offered to lend him money, but he instead asked her to move in with him and share the rent. He married her soon after and she helped him grow his firm. He hired her, but he won't give her a raise since he doesn't want to favor anyone. The fact that he makes 7 times as much as she does drives Lena crazy. When it comes to household bills, he insists that she contribute half, even going so far as to keep an itemized list. When Ying Ying sees the ice cream on this list, she wonders why Lena is paying for half of it if she won't eat any of it. The first thing Harold says to Lena is that he just assumed she was on one of her many diets when she brings this up with him. She hears a crash in the guest room while they are arguing. On an unsteady table Harold had created years before, Ying Ying threw a vase. As Lena begins to tidy up, she confides in her mother that she was certain it would happen due to the table's shakiness. Why didn't she do something to prevent it? Ying Ying inquires of her. 4 Directions. Waverly and Lindo dine at the 4 Directions, a posh restaurant. She intends to notify her mother that she is engaged in the near future. As a result, she loses patience with her mother's constant shifting of the focus. As a last resort, she brings Lindo back to her flat, where she hopes that viewing all of Rich's belongings will give her a clue. Waverly is reminded of a day when she had to take a break from chess. Her mother didn't respond the first time she skipped a match. When she realized she could have easily beaten the winner, she decided to return to it. It wasn't what Waverly expected from her mother. Her mother didn't respond the first time she skipped a match. When she realized she could have easily beaten the winner, she decided to go back to it. Rather than being excited, Waverly's mother told her that you can't always expect to return to what you've previously left behind. When Waverly plays, Lindo needs to stop being a haughty braggart. She puts down the polishing cloth on Waverly's awards. Waverly has started dropping games. She finally quits the game at the age of 14. Lindo's harsh criticism of Waverly's first spouse, Lindo, prompted Waverly to remember her first husband. The fact that he loves her as much as she does, and that she is frightened to tell her about him is the reason she is reluctant to do so. Waverly's parents don't like Rich when she takes him over for dinner. It appears to Waverly that he had a few minor blunders. It is hence her policy not to tell her mother about their engagement. In the end, Waverly has decided to go public with the information. Her mother is sound asleep in the house where she goes. She is overcome by the realization that she is so small and innocent, and she begins to weep. Lindo reawakens and inquires as to what the matter is. That Waverly feels she doesn't like Rich as much as Lindo does is a surprise to him. If they get married in October and plan to honeymoon in China, Lindo informs her. Waverly is thinking of going to China with her mother. This vacation could help them leave their disagreements behind, she hopes. Without Wood. When Rose Shoe Jordan goes to the mailbox, she discovers divorce papers and a $10,000 check from her husband. For the next 2 weeks, she takes a sleeping pill and is largely unconscious. In May, her mother, calling, snaps her out of it. She urges Rose to assert her own rights. After that, her spouse calls to ask her why she hasn't signed the papers. She has to leave the house because he is planning on getting married and wants to move in with her new spouse. To get the paperwork, she tells him to come over. When he arrives, she hands him the documents that haven't been signed and says she won't be going anywhere. Best quality. A few months before her mother Su Yuan passed away, Jingmei was cooking a crab supper for the Chinese New Year for her father. Su Yuan had warned her not to eat a cooked crab that was already dead, so she and her mother had shopped together for the meal. During her inspection of the crabs, one falls apart, and the vendor makes she purchase it as well. 10 crabs with 1 crab missing its leg are purchased by her. They prepare the crabs for the dinner guests, which will include Waverly and her family, at their house in New York. However, because Su Yuan failed to account for Waverly's daughter's presence, she was forced to serve the crab without a leg. This crab will be for her daughter, but Rich and she will have to settle for something less delectable. The remaining members of the group, up to and including the last 2, all select crabs. Su Yuan insists on having her daughter make the decision first, and the daughter then makes the decision for her mother. In the end, Jingmei gets the superior crab, and Su Yuan gets her way. Her crab is taken into the kitchen by Su Yuan, who claims she needs extra spice. When Waverly learns that Jingmei continues to visit her gay hairdresser, they have a conversation. It is possible he has AIDS, and she advises her client to see her hairdresser. Jing Mei informs her that she is unable to afford him. Waverly hasn't reimbursed her for some freelance job she did for them, so she mentions that they didn't want it, according to Waverly, but she didn't tell her since she didn't want to offend her. Afterward, Su Yuan urges Jing Mei to put herself first and only buy high-quality items if she wants to. This is followed by a jade pendant from her that she claims is important to her life's journey. Waverly should not be taken into consideration when making decisions. Like a crab, her words travel in a zigzag pattern. When she urges her kid to keep moving forward, she means it. Queen Mother of the Western Skies. It's a story about a grandmother spending time with her baby granddaughter in this story. As the mother of a young girl, she wonders if she should advise her to give up her innocence in order to protect herself or to preserve her confidence in the kindness of humankind intact. Regrettably, she imparted this trait on the girl's mother since she believes that when one only sees the bad in people, they tend to gravitate toward the bad. When the infant begins to giggle, she immediately ceases to be alarmed. The grandmother interprets the baby's laughter as a sign of the wisdom garnered from previous incarnations. She rules over the western skies as the imperial matriarch. The grandma encourages the small girl to teach her mother how to laugh and that losing one's innocence does not imply losing one's faith in human goodness and goodness in human beings. Magpies. While caring for Grandma, May's her mother told her a story. When she was a child, she sat by a lake and cried herself to sleep. If she didn't stop crying, her life would always be miserable, she was told by a turtle. His tears turn into magpies when he spits them out. Her tears, he informed her, are feeding the joy of someone else. As a result, you'll need to get used to holding back your tears. And May wished to depart with her mother after the death of her grandmother. When she traveled nevertheless, despite her uncle's objections, he disowned her and refused to allow her brother leave. Her mother was a wealthy city dweller's concubine. The man's second wife had duped her into taking the position. In her grief for her husband's death, she invited Mother Mays back to her home for a game of mahjong. She had wanted to have a child with him. Because they stayed up so late, the two women went to bed. And Mother Mays was raped by her husband while he and his wife swapped positions at night. She was compelled to stay with him the following day. When she gave birth to a boy, she was given custody of the baby by the second wife. Second wife and Mother Mays was able to keep her daughter and the guy offered to build them a house, but she was stopped by the second wife. In the end, her mother took her own life. And May and her brother will be raised as his most prized possessions because of the man's apprehension of her haunting spirit. For her part, May smashes under her feet in front of the woman who was claiming that her mother had attempted to commit suicide by overdosing on pills. The day May learned to yell was that very day. Waiting between the trees. In Ying's opinion, the marriage of Lena and Ying will be a disaster. Remembering her first marriage, she reflects. She was married at the age of 16 to a much older man. When she first met him, she didn't expect to fall in love with him. She became pregnant, and her husband left her for an opera diva a few months into the pregnancy. His infidelity had been exposed during their entire marriage, and she was devastated. She is distraught and decides to abort her unborn child. Ying, who was born in the tiger year, is acutely aware of her dual nature. In contrast to the gold side's ferocity, the black side's subtlety and guile are formidable. Ying turned to her darker side after her husband broke up with her. She married Clifford St. Clair 4 years after she first met him, but only after she learned of her husband's death. She believes that her previous marriage sapped her of her ferocious energy to the point where she was unable to pass it on to her daughter, who was also born in the year of the tiger this past year. She needs to help Lena reclaim her fighting spirit so she can take on the world. She chooses to tell Lena her story so that she might unleash her tiger. Double face. Preparations for Waverly's wedding and honeymoon in China are underway. It makes her chuckle to worry if they'll let her leave China because she looks so Chinese. Waverly takes Lindo to her hairdresser to get her hair straightened, and Lindo thinks Waverly may be ashamed of her since she is trying to make her more American. The fact that Waverly is thrilled when her hairdresser remarks on how similar she and her mother appear makes it clear to Lindo that she needn't be embarrassed of her mother after all. Even their noses are twisted. When she wears it, Waverly looks sly. Nobody can tell what she's thinking because she has two faces. A few years ago, Lindo visited China for the first time and was immediately recognized as an American. A pair of tickets. The family of Jing father Mays welcomes them to China when they arrive there with their daughter. He finishes Su Yuan's story for her while staying at the motel. She was struck down with dysentery while out for a walk with her daughters. She asks for rescue from passing pilgrims, aware that she was dying. Finally, she stuffed her daughter's garments with her mother's jewelry, photos, and letters. You should beg the person who rescued them to not take them to the address she wrote down on the documents. After that, she just kind of drifted off to die. She awoke in a hospital after being rescued and was surprised to find herself there. Her spouse had been killed in a car accident. While there, she ran upon Jing's dad, May's Canning Wu. Even though he tried to assist her, she was unable to locate her daughters with his assistance. Later, she learned that the girls had been saved by some monks who had difficulty finding someone to read the letters they had written. When they finally made it to the address, 7 years later, Su Yuan and Canning were already in the United States. The girls were spotted in a retail shop by an old schoolmate of hers after she died. The buddy recognized them as being in search of their mother since they looked so much alike. Canning credited Su Yuan's spirit for his success in the hunt. Jing Mei is afraid they won't recognize her when they step off the plane and become uncomfortable. The kids, on the other hand, are delighted to have her and are eager to learn about her mother. Their mother's face is seen when her father takes a picture of the three of them together. Su Yuan Wu, the founder of the Joy Luck Club. When the Sino-Japanese War broke out, she had already been married and had twin children. Her husband died during the war, and she lost contact with her 2 daughters. After her second marriage ended in divorce, she married again and had a daughter, but she continued to search for her missing daughters for the rest of her life. She was finally able to locate them, but she died before she was able to join them on their adventures. Instead of dwelling on the difficulties that life brings, she focuses on creating happiness and success. To discover her daughter's hidden talent, she pushes and pulls on her. Jing Mei Wu, daughter of Su Yuan Wu. Born in the United States and raised there. As a teenager, she is still searching for her place in the world. Because of her low self-esteem, she does not believe she is capable of fulfilling her mother's dream of finding the twin girls. More and more she discovers about herself as a person as she gains knowledge about her mother. Instead of showing the love her mother intended, she believes her mother's continual criticism displays a lack of affection. Lin Dozhong, a member of the Joy Luck Club. Born in China and raised there. A promise of marriage was made to her at the age of 2. Her mother and despotism laws had ensnared her. After marrying at the age of 16, her husband is unable to complete the union. Her mother and superstition laws is what finally frees her from the marriage. She instills in her daughter the importance of developing an inner source of power that is not obvious to the naked eye. While Waverly's chess prowess grows, her mother's relationship with her begins to deteriorate. Even though she is American, Lindo is concerned about making her daughter the same way. Waverly Zhang, born and raised in America, her mother named her after the street they lived on in San Francisco in hopes she will be more American. A kid prodigy at chess, she gave it up as an adolescent. Chess champ and accomplished lawyer because she was trained by her mother how to disguise the feelings and thoughts she harbored. As for the second marriage she is going to get into despite the failure of their first, her hopes are sky high. Because of her apprehension, she refuses to notify her mother about her engagement for the better part of the novel. And Mei Shu, a Joy Luck Club member. Born in China and raised there. After her grandmother's death, Mei moves in with her mother, who was abducted by a wealthy businessman as his concubine after the death of her father. She learns the value of speaking up for herself at the home of the businessman. She wishes to teach her daughter, Rose, this lesson. After the death of her son, she has mostly abandoned her belief in God. Rose Shu, and daughter, Mei's born and raised in America. Her relationship with her husband has soured. She's always let her husband make the decisions, but now their marriage is falling apart because he wants her to take on more responsibility. Because of this, she knows the necessity of standing up for herself. Ying St. Clair, a member of the Joy Luck Club. She marries an older family acquaintance while she's just a tween because she knows it's her duty and destiny. While pregnant, she begins to fall in love with him and finds out he has moved on to a new relationship. She is devastated and decides to abort her unborn child. She marries Clifford St. Clair and moves to the United States after they meet. She feels that by giving her daughter an American name, she would help her adapt to life in the United States more easily. To avoid the same fate as her own, the mother wishes to give her daughter the strength to quit a marriage that doesn't work for either of them. Lena St. Clair, Ying daughter. Ying's born in the United States of America. Unfortunately, she is stuck in a horrible marriage since she took her mother's passive attitude into her own relationship and job. Biography of Amy Tan. Amy Tan was born on February 19, 1952, in Oakland, California. Tan was one of 3 children born to Daisy and John, all of whom were Chinese immigrants. Her father and brother both died of brain tumors when Tan was just 15 years old. When Tan's mother relocated the family to Switzerland following the death of Tan's father, Amy was able to attend high school there. During her time in Shanghai, Tan learned that her mother had been forced to abandon her children from a previous abusive marriage there. The 3 half-siblings that Tan had never met before met her in China. Prior to attending San Jose State University, Tan attended Linfield College in Oregon, earning a bachelor's degree in English and a master's degree in English and linguistics. Tan and Ludi Mate met on a blind date while both students at San Jose State University, and the two fell in love right away. In 1974, they exchanged vows and began a life together. In order to pay the bills, Tan worked as a switchboard operator and a pizza maker after graduating college. Tan's literary career began after she performed odd jobs as a switchboard operator and a pizza maker to make ends meet after graduation. When Tan's debut novel, The Joy Luck Club, was released in 1989, it was a huge hit with critics and readers alike. In 1993, Tan wrote the screenplay for the film version, which was released in theaters. When Tan's second book, The Kitchen God's Wife, was released in 1991, it was a huge success and cemented her status as a household celebrity in Singapore. Her second novel, The Kitchen God's Wife, was published in 1991, making Tan a household name at the time and enabling her to pursue a full-time career as a novelist. The most current of Tan's novels was released in 2013, and he has also written 2 best-selling children's books about Chinese culture as well as an additional 5 non-fiction bestsellers. 2 American Library Association awards and a Commonwealth Gold Award are among the many honors she has received for her work. Her screenplay for The Joy Luck Club was nominated for a BAFTA as well. Tan was first diagnosed with Lyme disease in 1998 and has been dealing with the disease's consequences, including epileptic seizures, ever since. As a result, Tan established Lyme Aid for Kids, a non-profit organization that assists children with Lyme disease who lack health insurance in paying for their medical care. Tan was first diagnosed with Lyme disease in 1998 and has been dealing with the disease's consequences, including epileptic seizures, ever since. As a result, Tan established Lyme Aid for Kids, a non-profit organization that provides financial assistance to children with Lyme disease who do not have health insurance. T.S. Eliot Tan presently resides in San Francisco with her husband and frequently performs in a band called the Rock Bottom Remainders alongside other well-known authors, such as Barbara Kingsolver and Stephen King. Tan and her husband currently reside in San Francisco, California, where she frequently performs in a band called the Rock Bottom Remainders alongside other notable authors such as Barbara Kingsolver and Stephen King. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.